Greetings and good morning. Welcome. So, as you can probably tell by this channel, we're kind of all over the place here. Just kind of enjoying life, learning, and definitely right now I'm in the learning phase, trying to educate myself on a lot of different topics, especially related to finances and the financial markets, economy, and all that. One thing I came across was a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a book by G. Edward Griffin. So the question from that book that I have gleaned so far, or the question I have, I guess you could say, is did a handful of wealthy, powerful bankers and power brokers design the monetary system that's used throughout the world right now from a private island under a secret enclave? And did they export that model worldwide? Does the way we live, does the way you live today, your finances, does it all come down to that private meeting and those 7 or 8 very wealthy, very powerful people? As I said, the book is called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. And there are a lot of historical records, names, and claims made in that from everything I can tell so far, seem to be very accurate and disturbing. So the backdrop is early 1900s, 1907. There was a lot of bank runs, credit freezing, and J.P. Morgan, the individual, the person, not the bank, but the person that started the banks, personally orchestrating rescues. That should clue you in about how bad things were, but even more so how bad things became. Congress ended up creating a National Monetary Commission to propose the reforms as a result of all that, but that's not even really the highlight. In 1910, a very small group of individuals got together in North Carolina on Jekyll Island to have a conference. And that draft became the template for what is now the Federal Reserve. Not just the American Federal Reserve, but the worldwide Federal Reserve. Every bank in the world exists today and is outlined under this single thing, this single meeting. And even the Federal Reserve's own historical archives and materials back up pretty much all the claims in this book. So the 6 men that physically met at Jekyll Island in November of 1910 were Senator Nelson W. Aldrich. He was the current chair of the Senate Finance Committee and the National Monetary Commission. Next, we have A. Pitt Andrew, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Henry P. Davison, senior partner at J.P. Morgan and Company. Arthur Shelton, Senator Aldrich's private secretary. Frank A. Vanderlip, president of the National City Bank of New York, which, as we'll find out, was the largest bank in the country at that time, if not the world, and was the predecessor to what is now called Citibank. And finally, we have Paul M. Warburg as a partner at Kuhn Loeb and Company. It's a leading Wall Street investment bank. Later, unironically, I'm sure, he became an original member and vice chair of the Federal Reserve Board. And they met to draft a central banking plan. The secrecy was deliberate to avoid political backlash. So there was only one real politician in all of this. The rest of these guys were wealthy, rich bankers, finance people. So the overall thesis of Griffin's book here is that the Federal Reserve, and this is all Federal Reserves, not just the American version, operate as essentially banking cartels. What they do is they socialize any losses that institutions have so that you and me help offset any losses that these institutions have, but privatize all gains. So we take the hit for their losses, but receive nothing for their gains. And all of this together enables chronic inflation. And if you kind of paying attention to the timeline, the meeting was in 1910. The Federal Reserve Act was in 1913. World War I, I believe, started in 1914. Coincidentally or not. There is some conspiracy versions of that. But as we all know, 1929 was stock market crash. And then World War II, 10 years later. Could be a lot of coincidence in a lot of this, but I don't want to get in conspiracy theories because I don't want that to be what this channel is about. This is more about education, learning the process, and all that comes with that. They're basically this group, this Jekyll Island meeting, and the Federal Reserve that came after have created what Griffin called a dynastic financial network, a dynasty of financial people, organizations. J.P. Morgan and Company had a direct seat at Jekyll. So the most powerful, richest, most powerful person, at least in America, again, if not the world, J.P. Morgan, had a direct influence over the policies and direction that came from Jekyll Island via Henry P. Davison. National City Bank, as I said, was the nation's largest bank, was led by Frank Vanderlip. And Vanderlip is commonly described as having and reflecting Rockefellers' interests of that era. So now we have both J.P. Morgan and Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller. If you haven't heard of these names, do your research. Two of the most powerful, richest people in the world at that time. And even by today's standards, they would be in billionaire status easily. As mentioned, Senator Aldrich was literally family with these rich elites of Rockefeller and Morgan. because his daughter, Abby, married John D. Rockefeller Jr. A lot of pieces being put together. Paul M. Warburg of Kuhn Loeb and Company became a federal board member and later vice chair, advocating a central bank modeled on European practice. And there's also references in the book to the Rothschilds and just the banking dynasties that came from this. So the Jekyll draft, as it's called, often called the Aldrich Plan, wasn't passed as is. There were political reshapings in what was called the Glass-Owen Compromise. And a lot of this I know is very dry, but just kind of mention it in case you want to do your own research further into what these documents are. It was the Glass-Owen Compromise was signed by President Wilson as the Federal Reserve Act, December 23rd, 1913. But historians all agree that the Jekyll Island meeting was the foundation for this structure. What in the book, Griffin kind of gives a punch list, I guess you could call it, of what all kind of came out of this, the logic, the thoughts, and the direction. So first, it's cartel logic. The Federal Reserve aligns big bank incentives, smoothing crisis for the system, but entrenching the largest players. Inflation is a hidden tax. So every time inflation goes up, you and I are taxed. It's not a direct tax. It's not a sales tax. It's not an income tax. It's a hidden tax. And even I was not as aware of it as I probably should be until I started doing my research over the last couple of years. Money creation transfers purchasing power. Means every time the Federal Reserve prints money, you and I lose power, purchasing power. So it's not so much the prices of goods and services that are going up. It's just the number of dollars in circulation goes up so much that the cost of goods and services has to go up at least in a dollar value. The easiest explanation is like a piece of pizza. You cut it into 8 slices, and each slice is worth $1. Well, now you cut it into 16 slices, but each slice is now only worth 50 cents. Cut it again, now it's worth 25 cents per slice. The overall value of the pie is still the same. It's still at $8 for the whole pie. But there's more slices, but each slice is so much smaller. And when you keep raising inflation, printing money over the last 100 years or so, now you've got trillions of slices of pizza. And your purchasing power now, compared to that of your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents, it's useless. You can't even measure. Their dollar would purchase so much more than your dollar today. I mean, we've all seen it. go to the store with $10 and you come out with 2 large shopping carts, and you have to get your wagon and open up the trunk and just piled everywhere. I mean, today for that same value, you have a single shopping bag. What else did Griffin mention? Bailouts and moral hazard. Well, I mean, all of this is immoral, probably. Losses can be socialized. Socialized losses. I mean, you and I are bailing out the banks. That's it in a nutshell. War finance. What this did is it made it easier to finance war, which could explain why America, at least, has been in wars for almost 100 years nonstop. There was a couple of years in there, I believe, we were not at war, but, and I can't speak for other countries, maybe there were other countries that have been in war for just as long, but I'm speaking from the American experience. Because how do they fund their wars? They just print more money. That's all the Federal Reserve does. And then they globalize the model, hence creating the central bank cartel, extending it across all borders and with a certain level of coordinated policy. And then there is what's called the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. So this is kind of the hub. It's the central bank for all the central banks. And that's when it gets kind of confusing on the back end of how all that works. And again, by design. You and I are not meant to understand it. So who all was initially involved? Now, every bank in the world is now involved, but initially, Bank of England, Banque de France, Reichsbank, Bank of Japan, the Federal Reserve System, which was established in 1913, but is kind of where all these banks came together, and the BIS, which I mentioned previously, the Bank of International Settlements. These 6 groups supported what came out of the Federal Reserve, the Jekyll Island meeting. Six men, 6 banks, 6 families have created everything we are in this society now, as far as finances and economy. I mean, what would we be today without them? Would we be better off or not? That's a question for you to kind of answer. I don't know. And we'll never know. Unless we, as a world, not just as individual countries, but probably as a world, we reset. And I don't even know how that would work. There's brighter minds than mine looking at that, and none of them have very good options. Though I haven't read into it much, Ray Dalio has what he's called the beautiful deleveraging. And I think it's like 4 levers to pull to kind of get us out of where we are now. But even he states that the odds of us even doing that are almost zero, because it's still going to be so much pain, and we tend to avoid that. So much has come out of that island, that one meeting with 6 people. And yet the repercussions, the coming off the gold standard twice, the attempts by the government to take gold back from the American people, the 2008 crisis, our financial response to pandemics and catastrophes. It all comes out of this, directly or indirectly. I didn't want the video to be this long. It's just disappointing to realize what happens when the wealthy elite get together. They've never done it for the betterment of the working man. And as I said in my previous video, when they have done everything they can, they have the resources, they have the avenues. When what they have created starts falling, they leave and let you and I pick up the pieces. They go to their own private island, own private yachts, and they live, and then they come back in with their riches and buy up what's left at even lower prices and start over. Do you find any way that this meeting has been a benefit? And please do your own research. These are my opinions and just what I've found so far. But what I find is disappointing. I guess that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.